What's up, everybody? 2 hours of GoJo and Golic about to come your way. I am back from a bout of tummy troubles, so here I am ready to help you get into 2 hours of goodness. Proposition for you, okay? Are we interested? We will talk about that. Plus, Golic grades. We're gonna get some grades from Senior as he takes on some things including Bluey. I don't know, it's kind of confusing. We'll get to that as well. Plus, this Senior Bowl, okay? Trevor Sikkema gonna join us to break it all down. We have great guests, so much fun stuff coming. 2 hours starts now.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to GoJo and Golic. Mike Golic Jr., Mike Golic Sr., Jesse Cofield back with us and feeling a lot better here. We got a great show for everybody. As always, make sure you download, subscribe, rate, review us, leave us a 5-star rating, and watch us here Monday through Friday from 8 to 10 a.m. Eastern on the DraftKings Network. Check out the YouTube channel. Jesse mentioned some great guests coming up here. The Senior Bowl, not just the nickname for the bathtub where my dad chooses to wash himself. Trevor Sikkema going to join us from there, update us. He was at the Shrine Bowl too, so lots of good looks at some of the prospects that will likely call your NFL team home very soon. Anthony Gargano going to join us here, Fox Sports radio host, dialed in on all things Philadelphia Eagles as we look at the conversation around Jalen Hurts and Nick Sirianni heading into the big game. We will get my dad. My dad hates grading things. It's one of my dad's least favorite tropes in all of sports media. Hates when we grade jobs, coaching hires, all these things. And so, of course, while he was away yesterday, going and getting checked out for things in preparation for his shoulder replacement, we decided to create a game where my dad is going to grade, including the NFL head coaching hires, literally everything else. So sorry, Dad. Welcome back.
You're going to get not a lot of words from me when we're grading head coaches, except the letter I for incomplete, 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 incomplete. So I don't know why you're doing this to me. You know how much I hate it. This is a son torturing a father in a very, very public way to grade a hire of a coach that has never been a head coach before. I'm supposed to grade it. Please.
I have a theory that you're going to give way on this and eventually come into the light that we all love here in the slop of sports. You are forged in the fire of sports talk radio. I am a valedictorian at the Stuttgart School of Broadcasting here. This is what we do and who we are at our core. So we'll try and embrace that. And we mentioned it a little bit, Jesse, there, the Adam Silver pitch for 10-minute quarters in the NBA, as he acknowledges clearly with this that there is some need for change around the sport as the conversation around ratings and all these different things have proliferated the league this fall. It's interesting to hear Adam Silver, and we will play that sound for you from his appearance on the Dan Patrick Show yesterday. Don't want to get too far into this show before we acknowledge either. I mean, it's all anyone could talk about this morning in the pre-show, and certainly will be a topic of conversation for everybody all day. But our hearts go out to everyone involved in the horrific situation in our nation's capital, where last night a passenger plane collided with a U.S. Army helicopter midair at Reagan National Airport in Washington, D.C. 64 people on board that plane, 3 soldiers on board the helicopter that was apparently part of a training exercise there, and just heartbreaking stuff. I mean, video of the moment of the crash. Obviously, emergency responders have been working overtime overnight to try and do what they can to, find survivors if that's possible. But, Dad, just a heartbreaking situation. One, I am stunned to see in 2025 going on in America, but just tremendously sad. And for everyone involved, I know, in our little world of sports this morning, there was word that there were figure skaters from both America and Russia on that flight coming back from a championship figure skating event in Wichita, Kansas, where that flight was connecting from. So just incredibly, incredibly sad news.
It's beyond words. And, there are training exercises that go on there, so that wasn't out of the norm, but obviously the helicopter flying up and hitting the plane. I mean, as a plane, I mean, for those that are nervous about flying, I mean, they were landing. They were basically done with their flight. I mean, so close to being on the runway and done with their flight, and all of a sudden it's over. There are almost no words for the tragedy that, and all we can say is our hearts go out to the family members who were there to pick up their loved ones, and all of a sudden are by procedure taken into a room and told what's going on. I mean, I just can't fathom. I just can't fathom that going on. So yeah, our hearts are just break for those people involved.
Yeah, everything can change in a second, and hopefully, they go through, figure out what happened, procedures, everything like that, just try to make things safer for everybody. So.
Yep, 100%. It's going to prompt a lot of questions that we don't have answers to right now, and no one really does at this point. And so we'll await those like everyone else. But again, it was one of those mornings where this is sort of hanging over everyone right now, because this is not something we see. This is going to be one of the worst aviation crashes and tragedies in modern U.S. history. And so it sits here like a pall over everyone this morning. And again, we'll do our best to distract you here the way that we always do, the way that this can sometimes be an escape for people for what goes on in real life. But at some point, you got to peel back the veil and be human with what we're all dealing with right now, and certainly what those people and their families are dealing with here. So our thoughts and prayers go on there. We will do the no easy transition thing here as we go and, try and make you laugh a little bit, talk about what's going on here in the lead up to Super Bowl week and the middle of this NBA season here. And Dad, I think one thing that caught my eye yesterday, as we're now entering the offseason for all but 2 teams in the NFL, and we're trying to tinker and see what's everyone going to do in an offseason that is largely viewed as a quarterback wasteland, between the NFL draft coming up, between the offseason free agent prospects here. And I thought this was one really important domino that fell yesterday. A report from Ian Rappaport at the NFL Network that Matthew Stafford wants to return in 2025. Now, there was some vagueness about, hey, what if that would be with the Los Angeles Rams? Obviously, contract situation needs to get worked out. He reworked his deal going into last season and put the bulk of the guaranteed money in there. So very little would be owed to him in 2025. No guaranteed money in 2026 for Matthew Stafford, who, we understand is kind of playing season to season at this point, given his age, given the amount of hits his body has taken. But, Dad, if he is coming back, it's going to be with the Los Angeles Rams. I don't know a world where this Rams team would forsake what is the opportunity in front of them in the NFC West right now and not find a way to get this worked out with Matthew Stafford. And so that one right there takes the Rams off the board for a team that could have been a potential rebuild candidate or a team fishing around in whatever quarterbacks end up becoming available this offseason.
Yeah, it definitely does. You're right. If he's coming back, he's coming back with the Rams. He's owed $23 million this year. He's a $49 million cap hit. He's owed $26 million in 26. And it's a $53 million cap hit. But as you mentioned, he helped the team out by restructuring last year and taking a lot of it in guaranteed money. Now he would like some guarantee, kind of like what Zach Martin did with the Cowboys, getting that 2-year deal with a decent amount of guaranteed money. Stafford would be looking for obviously more like quarterback guaranteed money to come back if they could work something out. But yes, I agree. If he comes back, he'll be coming back with the Rams. The Rams are, the young defense, especially that young defensive line, all the weapons. Now, Cooper Kupp is certainly going to be a question mark, but Puka Nacua there, obviously, Kyron Williams, a young running back there. So they're loaded and ready in an NFC West that is pretty open, right? There's no, we used to say San Francisco has this window of opportunity open, but that thing shut pretty quickly with injury and who's going to be able to play going on and what's the structure of the team going to look like. It's a pretty wide open division.
Yeah, I would agree. The Seahawks right now, year one of Mike Macdonald, look good. They've got changes there with the hire. Clint Kubiak is their offensive coordinator now. The Arizona Cardinals, sample size and grade incomplete. It seems like Jonathan Gannon's got that going in the right direction, but weren't really able to break through. And so, yeah, you have an opportunity to continue to be the team if health is a little bit better for you. If you shore up the offensive line situation, we'll talk more about the teams that lost in the divisional round and what their big questions facing them are this offseason, the Rams being one of them there. But, Dad, this goes a long way, and this is something we kind of expected. You always talk about this. For a player that's been around as long as Matthew Stafford, who is, on north side of 35 years old. And for him, Dad, it's not like Brady and some of these guys that never got touched up a ton during their career. Matthew Stafford, the whole hallmark of his career, is a guy who's played with that reckless abandon, who's pushed through injury, who's been the tough guy that could show his team he's putting it on the line just like they are. And so that guy's body's got to feel, even now, though he's taking great care of it, like it's been through the meat grinder. But that being said, I think the opportunity that we just described going to be too much for him to pass up. And so now you look out at the rest of the offseason here, and that takes one team off the table that we have to talk about in that regard. The other team, who also has an older quarterback that's in this situation, is the New York Jets. A lot of discussion about Aaron Rodgers and a lot of the questions thrown Aaron Glenn's way early on in his Jets tenure as he was introduced had to do with the future of Aaron Rodgers. Here was Aaron Glenn talking about this the other day.
Will Aaron Rodgers be your quarterback?
You're going to continue to ask me the same question and get the same answer. We're still in evaluation mode. So for anybody else going to ask that, I'm going to give you the same answer. So don't waste your time. We're clear.
Well, let's answer that. What do you look for in a quarterback? Like, what's an Aaron Glenn quarterback?
A winner. A winner. Mental and physical toughness. When you talk about that, you're not going to get me.
Well, let me ask you this. Parcells, I know you guys are close. He always
That's
said...
Parcells.
Okay.
I'm Aaron Glenn.
First off, Aaron Glenn, very good at this already with the New York Jets press conference here. Now, it's all sunshines and rainbows in the introductory, or as Jerry Jones said, smiles and glory holes in the introductory press conference, and will be different if all of a sudden they're 1-4 heading into week 5. But, Dad, I think that question looming over as we have other news about the Jets, that one seems to be more obvious where, hey, at best, Aaron Rodgers would be back as a backup or a mentor, but more than likely, that's a team that I think in the interest of trying to have a clean start with a new regime would likely look at this situation and say, we want to distance ourselves from all of the things that we just saw go through this failed brief era of Jets football.
Yeah, I would distance myself from it, but the question is, who's going to be the quarterback? They picked 7th in the draft. There's basically 2 quarterbacks that are first-round worthy according to grades. So they're not going to reach for somebody at 7, a third quarterback at 7, though we've seen reaches before at the quarterback position. So what do they do at quarterback? I mean, where do they go? What free agent do they bring in? And do they pick a quarterback later in the draft and have Aaron Rodgers be a bridge guy? I mean, they're in a really, really tough. Most teams that aren't picking in the top handful or top 3 picks who need a quarterback, they're going to be searching. You know, Sam Darnold is going to be the somewhat attractive free agent out there, right? Even though his last 2 games were nothing to write home about, the season ender against Detroit, and then the playoff game where he was sacked 9 times against the Rams. So, I mean, I think people look at Darnold as kind of a bridge guy, signed to a short-term deal, kind of a bridge guy. But I doubt he's going back to the Jets. So, I mean, for the Jets, what do you do at quarterback? I mean, teams that need quarterback that are picking below 5, unless they trade up and give up a ton of assets for players that while considered first-round picks, are considered lower ranked than the top 6 that went in the first round last year, in last year's draft. So are you going to give up a lot of assets to go up and try and get one of those guys? I would think not, especially from the 7th slot. So what do the Jets do at quarterback? That's a major, major question.
I will say, I think when it comes to, if you're looking for a bridge guy, because I think that's what they're looking for, and I think what a lot of people around the league are going to be looking for, like Sam Darnold, that's a different prospect, and it is hilarious to think you won't even need jersey edits if you wanted to try and go down that road with the New York Jets franchise that knows him very well. If I am Sam Darnold, I am not signing up for that hell ever again.
No.
But I digress. You made it out. Like, you're not going back. You made it out of the struggle there in New York, my brother. So stay far, far away from that mess and go towards the light. But as far as who they go to there, because, Dad, that was what Aaron Rodgers would be. He would be back on a deal that's comparatively more palpable for them, or more palatable for them, and he'd be a bridge quarterback here. But if you look outside of that, you got Jameis Winston, who's going to be a free agent, who is back up with the Cleveland Browns this year. You've got whoever doesn't get signed. We heard from Art Rooney the other day that either Russell Wilson or Justin Fields would likely be the quarterback they re-sign, but they're probably only going to re-sign one of them. And so Justin Fields could be someone available in that way. Gardner Minshew, who's sort of become a professional bridge quarterback, fresh off a failed stint with the Las Vegas Raiders. And so if you're just looking for someone to plug the hole in the dam, it does feel like there'd be options for that out there if they're the New York Jets. But there's also got to then be an admission from the organization. And we see this snakebite coaches all the time, especially, let's call it what it is, minority coaches, where, hey, you're saddled with a bad situation, but then there's no grace given by the organization when all of a sudden, surprise, surprise, your team doesn't win a ton of games.
Yeah, it's exactly right. It's a difficult situation to be in, to be a first-time head coach with no quarterback options that seem to be long-term, because that's what a team is looking for, right? A team wants to settle in at a quarterback, A, for ability, knowing you have an above average to great quarterback that can lead your team eventually to a championship. B, to know where you're going to be cap-wise. If that quarterback from his rookie year on is doing well and you're going to sign him to a big deal, you can obviously have the foresight to understand what those numbers are going to be and what your cap numbers are going to be. If you don't have a quarterback, you can't do any of that. You can do it for the immediate of what a bridge quarterback type quarterback is going to be, but you haven't really started the clock on your quarterback of the future. And that's difficult for a first-time head coach, without question. So that's especially if you're not given a grace period. I mean, boy, you talk about needing a grace period. The Jets are a team that needs a grace period. The Raiders are a team that needs a grace period. The Saints are a team that needs, a grace period, but it all depends on the owner.
Now, interesting for the Jets, looking outside of just the big picture version of this, Aaron Glenn did make one of his first hires, Dad, Steve Wilks as his defensive coordinator. Yeah. No ties between the two in the lead up, said he just wanted the best coaches for that spot. Steve Wilks comes with head coaching experience before, which invaluable for a first-time head coach and someone to be able to bounce things off of. Obviously, the last time we saw Steve Wilks, Dad, wasn't all sunshine and rainbows coming off that 49ers season where they ultimately lose to the Chiefs in the championship, as Steve Wilks became the target for a lot of people towards the back half of that year where they're searching for a pass rusher. That was when they brought Chase Young over to try and offset things here. So what'd you make of that hire quickly before we get out of this?
Well, I mean, again, Steve Wilks' experience, 16 years coaching in the league, 6 different teams, head coaching experience with the Cardinals and interim with Carolina. So I do think that's good for a first-time head coach to get. And DeMeco Ryans was the D coordinator of the 49ers before Wilks, and that defense was playing well. Wilks took over, and it took a step back. He didn't coach last year. An important thing is Aaron Glenn said to be a head coach, he needs to be a head coach. He's not calling defensive plays. So Steve Wilks will be the one calling defensive plays. So Aaron Rodgers will be the head coach, or Aaron Glenn will be the head coach, looking over everything. Steve Wilks will run that defense. Aaron Rodgers. That was last year Aaron Rodgers ran the team.
I was going to say the Freudian slip of last year's situation for the New York Jets, where he was your quarterback and kind of pseudo coach. Coming up next, who are some of the players that Aaron Glenn and others will be coaching? We get a live look inside the Senior Bowl performances from this week next. All right, welcome back to GoJo and Golic. Hoping to talk to Trevor Sikkema, lead draft analyst at Pro Football Focus, who's been at the Shrine Bowl, Dad, down at the Senior Bowl. It's that time of year where all of a sudden, we talked about it yesterday when you were out here, but we're getting hand size measurements. We're seeing one-on-one footage coming out of practice right now here. I know you're not a big fan of the draft, Dad, but where are you on like the postseason bowl games and Senior Bowl in terms of your evaluation of players as they get ready to make this jump?
No, I'm not. I'm a fan of the draft. I'm not a big fan of the combine. The draft obviously is fine. Listen, and the games themselves, I don't put as much stock in. It's the Senior Bowl practice week. I mean, quite honestly, I think there are a lot of scouts that leave before the game and end up just watching tape of the game. It's the practices that you watch. You're put in situations, game situations in practice to see how somebody performs when the cameras aren't on, but the cameras are on during the Senior Bowl practice. Senior Bowl practice has become really, probably outside of the combine, the most attended week of post-college football. I mean, I know you have all the pro days and everything, but as far as getting players together, I think this is the most attended week outside of the combine of evaluations that are going on, where players are trying to solidify their spots where they think they're going to be drafted or raise their stock, against better players in the country. So I like Senior Bowl practice. Again, the game's a little more unwielding, but the practices where it's more controlled, I kind of like it.
Yeah, no, I'd agree, especially the importance of, seeing the small school guys get their opportunity. And there's some really good ones that have popped during this practice. So we'll talk to Trevor about that. I think coming up in the next hour, we got some time zones crossed there with him. And so he'll be joining us in the second hour of the show. Anthony Gargano going to join us to talk Eagles in the next segment. So, Dad, instead, as we get ready to talk about prospects that'll be available in this draft, why don't we talk about some of the teams that might need them that are getting closer to over the hump here? We were doing yesterday, today, and tomorrow big questions in the offseason for eliminated playoff teams. Shout out to the Mina Kimes Show featuring Lenny. You can download that today. I jumped on with Mina to do this exercise with her. Thought this might be fun for us to do here. We did the teams that lost in the wild card round yesterday. Dad, the divisional round losers today are the ones that we're going to look at here from the AFC and NFC. So that includes the Baltimore Ravens, the Houston Texans, the Los Angeles Rams, and the Detroit Lions. So, Dad, let's start in the AFC with the Baltimore Ravens, looking at this team and what they accomplished this year, a defense that got better as the season went along after losing so much last offseason in coaching. Great players from that group found their way back home. And Lamar Jackson and Derrick Henry rewrote record books in a lot of ways, one of the best offenses we've seen in a long time. So what is the big question that you have for this team this offseason in terms of what they've got to do to get over this hump that's really started to build for them in the postseason?
Well, I mean, you look at now, since week 11 on, I did more than a few of their games this year. Their pass defense really got better because the first week 1 through 10, they had the safety Kyle Hamilton playing on average 5 yards off the line of scrimmage. And from week 11 on, he ended up playing over 9 yards off the scrimmage, more like a safety. And their secondary, their pass defense improved, but they still need another safety. Their old line was together. Last year they went through injuries. This year it was together pretty well. But Ronnie Stanley is a free agent at left tackle. So that's obviously big of what's going to go on there. Are they going to lose him? And if so, they're going to need to get a left tackle. They could use an edge rusher as well. So while, again, it's a team right on the verge of being there, so normally your needs are less, but they still do have needs. So I think a safety, potentially an offensive tackle are going to be those needs.
Yeah, I might even go corner on this team just because Nate Wiggins was such a hit for them on the opposite side. Marlon Humphrey's best position seems to be at the nickel. And so if you can get someone to really hold up opposite Nate, you got something in that tandem to go along with these guys. But, Dad, he's fortunate enough to be in this position now. So happy for Ronnie. Obviously, he's a guy that we know from Notre Dame. He and I had a little bit of an overlap there when he first got on campus. Ronnie looked like his injury had taken its toll the last couple of years. He played phenomenal football this year. And so whatever he can get out of this deal, go and get. If you're the Baltimore Ravens, I'd work hard to keep him because him and Patrick McCarry are both free agents. Pat McCarry, who's been one of the most important utility guys for this Ravens team over the last couple of years along offensive line. And you want that stabilized, Dad. That group came together really well, but was a bit of a question mark because of all the movement going into the season. And that right side's all new guys, so I would try and keep him there. But other than that, it's kind of what we mentioned. You're working around the edges here for a team that was really close. What about the Houston Texans, Dad? They fire Bobby Slowick, so obviously there's an admission that there was some issues there. We had talked about yesterday, Lance Zierlein with an ESPN radio story about how apparently there had been friction between those two going all the way back to before the draft, a contentious altercation between those two guys there. Obviously, they couldn't protect CJ this year. So, Dad, is it as simple as they have to go out here and find offensive line help, or is there something more you see for the Texans?
Boy, what a fall for Bobby Slowick, right? After last year, head coaching opportunities, and then no job. I mean, it's really incredible of how quickly it can turn. Yeah, I mean, listen, I think they need O-line help, both for tackle and interior offensive line. Do you go and get wide receiver help because of the injury? I mean, you know, Nico Collins, excellent. Obviously, Stephon Diggs, Tank Dell. I mean, those three are one of the best trios when healthy in the league. Stephon Diggs being 31 years old. Do you know or think?
And a free agent right now. Stephon Diggs also, remember, restructured that deal when he came over to Houston. They made it a one-year deal so he could hit free agency. Now, that's what made the injury even more devastating for him, is that you knew what was on the line for him personally. And so, yeah, Dad, I do think that's going to be one of those spots. I mean, Tank Dell, this is the second year that he's ended the season with, unfortunately, a horrific injury in that receiver room. So you're going to need an accent piece to Nico Collins in that receiving core, while you also, I don't know what the answer is up front, Dad. 11 different line combinations, played at least 10 snaps for them last season. And you saw towards the end, right? Like, they started the year, Juice Scruggs more in the middle. Jarrett Patterson, I thought, did a really good job at center by year's end. Titus Howard played his best football when he got moved back into guard, where he had already started 21 games. So you drafted Blake Fisher in the second round, who ended up starting the playoff game for you at right tackle. Right. So you've got pieces. Part of me is like, hey, yeah, improve some of the talent in there if you can go out. I think Tevin Jenkins is a free agent that might be in their range for the interior of that offensive line. I don't know if they're going to be able to afford like a Trey Smith, who's going to be the high-prized interior offensive line free agent of this cycle. But maybe go that route there, and then just, hope whatever you're doing at coordinator next also has a good plan for how you're going to go about structuring protection around CJ, because they gave up, 52 sacks in the regular season this season, which just can't be the case.
Well, no, I mean, again, you mentioned it. You at the most cohesive position needed on the field, you can't have 11 different line combinations. I mean, you just can't. And a lot of that is out of the control when there's an injury. But yeah, that's an area you have to shore up.
No doubt about that. So those teams aren't far away. The Texans, at least you can point to, defense still rips. We saw that in the playoff game. They gave everybody hell on that side of the ball. D'Amico Ryans has built that war machine in the likeness of what he left in San Francisco. Will Anderson Jr. and Daniil Hunter were a nightmare. Azeez Al-Sair in that linebacker core looked good. Stingley's a star. So you can sort of crock-pot the defense, just set it and forget it, and focus on rebuilding this offense to what it was in 2023. Let's look on the NFC side, Dad. It can be quicker on the Los Angeles Rams because we talked about them some before, but now that we know Stafford is going to play in 2025, we'd imagine, barring something crazy, if both sides couldn't come together on a deal that makes it palatable for both, he's going to be playing quarterback for them. So what do they need to do around him? That team really caught fire towards the end of the year. The young players on that defense stepped up. So what do you see as the next step for the Rams in 2025?
Well, first off, leave the D-line alone. They're good there. So I would say I would look at probably, again, offensive line, tackle. Maybe they're another team that went through injuries on the O-line, but I would look at tackle there. And then the back end of the defense, right? Linebacker, cornerback, safety situation, more cornerback, really, and linebacker situation. But I would look at the back part of that defense along with maybe the outside offensive line tackle position.
A nice thumper at linebacker, because we talked about it all through the playoffs. All their fun stats about that defensive line that were great. Fisk and Jared Verse, Kobe Turner from last year. All these guys can rip against the pass. It didn't look quite as cute when all of a sudden it got held up to the light of day against the opposing run games, especially in the NFC, where you're going to see Detroit, you're going to see Philadelphia, you're going to see these teams that are well built in the trenches. And so you'd want that hammered out. But, Dad, I'm with you. It's got to be O-line, whether it's Rob Havenstein getting older at tackle, Bo Limmer, who filled in nicely for you and did a good job as a late-round draft pick at center, but the failed Jonah Jackson experiment, I don't know what happens there, but you've got to get the interior offensive line situation steadied again. It was your strength in 2023 when you became an inside run team. It protects Matthew Stafford, who's not one of these mobile quarterbacks around the league, and so I think you really have to start there because that was the foundation of what this new version of the Rams was supposed to be, and it got cracked a little last year, and I think the results varied because of that. The last one here is really interesting, Dad. The Detroit Lions. We saw last year the brain drain came for the Baltimore Ravens. Now, it was all on defense there. The Lions at this point have lost offensive coordinator, defensive coordinator, a number of assistants. So can the Detroit Lions, Dad, overcome this massive overhaul in their coaching staff?
Well, we saw the Eagles fail at it when they lost Shane Steichen and Jonathan Gannon one offseason to the Arizona Cardinals and Indianapolis Colts. They've kind of cycled through offensive and defensive coordinators. So you gotta hopefully get the right fit of what you have to work with. And listen, it was one of the better offensive lines in the league. Now, Kevin Zeitler, we'll see. He obviously had the one-year deal, and he had the hammy injury to end the season. You have Aiden Hutchinson will be coming back. You could use another edge rusher, obviously, to help there. The secondary, they gave up yards on the back end of that defense. But as far as weapons, I mean, listen, you again are stacked with weapons at receiver, at tight end, at running back, at quarterback. You're obviously you're coming back with Goff again. So you're set at these scoring positions. You need to stabilize that O-line. Again, it was one of the better offensive lines in the league, maybe just a little tweak here and there. But I would say, the back half, another edge rusher in the back half or the back part of that secondary or that defense for Detroit needs work.
It is one of those weird things, Dad, where the Lions' defense is so hard to eval because you didn't get to see them fully healthy for so much of week 7 and beyond. It felt like every week someone was going down because there's things to like about that back end. Brian Branch has been a star for them. Terry and Arnold look good in spurts at times. You know, you brought over, was it Carlton Davis this year? Was that the one they brought over in free agency to try and stabilize it? So you think there might be good bones. Even the same thing true up front for rushers opposite Aiden Hutchinson. So I kind of want to see them healthy. My concern is going to be on offense, though. So as far as the coaches, on defense, they promoted Kelvin Shepard, who had worked with their linebackers and now is going to be their D coordinator. And is another guy, Dad, in the likeness of this group, you know, former player himself, former linebacker at, I believe, LSU that played in the NFL after that. Really seems to command a room well. Great stories about him addressing the team, kind of similar to the intangibles that the rest of this coaching staff has. And then John Morton, who's a Broncos assistant, they hired as the offensive coordinator. And that's the biggest question, Dan. I look squarely at the offensive line. That's been the strength of this team. Some cracks along the interior with age and injury. Do you start to just reload there? Because Jared Goff, again, another guy that requires different handling at quarterback. He's a very good quarterback. We're long gone with the days of trying to figure out whether or not you can win with Jared Goff. But what you can't do is overcome deficiencies in your offensive line with Jared Goff. He's not that kind of quarterback. It's like the Wicked Witch of the West. You pour water on him and he's going to melt. If you apply pressure in too many places, he's going to fall down like late-stage Peyton Manning. And so you've got to shore up that interior line and continue to make that the strength. Because in losing Ben Johnson, you're going to have to Jimmy and Joe more guys, Dad. We don't know what John Morton's going to be at as a coordinator. We know Ben Johnson was one of the most creative play designers in the league, and that's out the door.
And two things. One, when you bring in someone from another organization, you change the scheme, and along with changing the way you call plays. It could be the same scheme, but the way you call plays can be different. Like on defense, they promoted from within, so it'll be the same scheme. But bringing someone in from outside the organization, now the power of your team, the strength of your team, the offense, there's definitely a question mark.
Big questions there. We will hit the champ round losers tomorrow. But coming up next, let's look ahead to Super Bowl 59 and figure out what's at stake legacy-wise for Jalen Hurts and Nick Sirianni here on GoJo and Golic. All right, welcome back to GoJo and Golic. Mike Golic Jr., Mike Golic Sr., Jesse Cofield here. And little word to the wise right now, because we've got the void that is Super Bowl week upon us next week here. Fellas, Valentine's Day coming up very, very soon here. Want to make sure that you got your plans in order right now here. Take care of the lady in your life. Take care of the fella in your life. Whoever you need to show some love to, get it done here now. And with Valentine's Day coming up, 1-800-Flowers.com has you covered. Order early and score huge savings like the Double the Roses for free. Act now. Visit 1-800-Flowers.com/Gojo and get that ironed out. And while we're handing out flowers, Dad, it feels like that time for Nick Sirianni and for Jalen Hurts to maybe give them their flowers after a season there where they've been called into question a bunch. And so to help us out with that, we're delighted to welcome in Anthony Gargano right now. You can check him out, Fox Sports Radio, The Fellas, 5 to 9 a.m. Eastern on Saturdays with our buddy Jason Fitz. You got to hang out with Fitz on your Saturday mornings, man. That's a tough draw. How you doing?
What do you say, Golic brothers? It's great to be here. Yeah, Fitzy, he loves you. All right, just so you know, Junior, he loves you. We talk about you a lot.
I love Fitzy back, and he will always let you know and offer up a hug when he loves you, too. I'm sure if you guys have been together before, he's tried to go in for the hug early and often, so you're very used to the guy that we deal with there.
So it's all good. It's all good. I'm a hugger.
Okay, there we go.
I'm
there
like
we go.
Sirianni.
He's found loving arms on there as well as on the All City Network, doing a great job covering a lot of things, but especially Philadelphia. And Anthony, that's what we wanted to talk to you about here today. This Philadelphia Eagles team, we mentioned it. Jalen Hurts and Nick Sirianni all year long have sort of been polarizing cases at their various positions. So coming off of championship weekend and the performances there, what would you say is the prevailing narrative about those two heading into this Super Bowl matchup with Mahomes and Reed?
Yeah, you're exactly right. Listen, there has been, you go back to week 5 of this season when there was wide speculation whether or not Nick would actually make the season. All right, his job was in question. People wondered about Jalen. Can this offense throw the football? And look, they've done nothing but win. One of the things that Sirianni's done is the histrionics that we saw earlier in the season have gone away. They have been a buttoned-up team. This is not a team that last year they didn't tackle well. Now they got a bunch of new faces and Vic Fangio running the defense. But, Nick has made sure they practice, they tackle each week. He has practice outside the link. They're not penalized, right? They're a well-coached team. And then when it comes to Hurts, like we all understand about, with Mahomes and Allen and Burrow and all that stuff. Jalen does nothing but play winning football. He is a point guard, is how he plays the position. And you saw it last week on the 4th and 5, and he sees that AJ's manned up on the outside. He checks to the play, and he makes a perfect throw. He can make that throw all day long. I like to call him not a game manager, but a point guard. Whatever he has to do to win, whether that's with his feet, whether that's with his arm, whether it's not turning the ball over, that's what makes this offense successful when you have that line and Saquon.
Oh, listen, there's no questioning the offense, but unfortunately, I spent most of my career playing in Philadelphia where there can be drama at times, and the latest being after the game of Jalen saying he took the straitjacket off of me, and Nick Sirianni saying, oh, he was just joking around. There just seems to be something underlying, which isn't affecting him on the field this year like it did, I shouldn't say the relationship affected last year. They just fell apart last year. But is there something underlying with these two?
Yeah, I don't think that Jalen particularly likes Nick a lot, or at least work from a professional standpoint. I do think I don't think that was a joke. We've heard about it all the time. I think when you're a quarterback and you're tired of hearing or tired of being muzzled and tired of being put in that straitjacket, that you want a little love, that you're just not a passenger on the Saquon train. I think what happened, well, I know what happened, is that, when they had to buy in week 5, they reevaluated everything. They said, well, who are we? What's our identity? And their identity is a downhill run team. They have the best offensive line in football, and they have the best running back. And so they said, look, we just don't want to turn the ball over like we did the first 4 games. We're going to dial back the passing, dial back all the throwing, and we're going to be who we are. And do I think that rubbed Jalen the wrong way? Probably. At some point, your ego comes into play. But ultimately, the one thing I know about Hurts is that he likes to win more than anything.
Certainly, they've done a lot of that there. And you mentioned the group they've done it behind, this running game, this offensive line. I said with a different team, I was amazed this year how little with the Los Angeles Rams we talked about Aaron Donald and the loss of that player because they drafted these young guys and everything went so well. I could say a similar thing about the Philadelphia Eagles offensive line and losing Jason Kelce, who's a walk-in Hall of Famer, one of the greatest interior offensive linemen of all time. How has this group come together so quickly to replace that loss and perform at this level?
Yeah, it's and you saw it last week with both guys being hurt and each guy playing a half. I mean, they have been the best group. And look, Jason, we know how his greatness when it comes to it. One of the big additions to that line was Mekhi Becton at right guard, right? He tackle with the Jets. He comes in and he's a road grader. Jeff Stoutland, who is the best offensive line coach in the history of the NFL, all right, Stoutland University. He's the one who made Jordan Mailata a Pro Bowl left tackle. He's the one that makes Dickerson go. He's the one that really has this cohesiveness of this line when it comes to protections and movement. And he's made Becton into a damn good guard. And that right side with him and Lane Johnson is just nasty, man. It plows people.
Yeah, it's the biggest offensive line in the game, and Becton will have his share of fun against Chris Jones, the best D tackle in the league from the Chiefs, no doubt about it. And let's go to another great D tackle. Well, you talked about the defense. Last year, they didn't value the linebacker position. They had injuries at the secondary position. They have a couple of excellent rookies in Mitchell and DeJean, and Zach Bond has been unreal at linebacker. But Jalen Carter has been an absolute one-man wrecking crew on that D line. So talk about his obviously his I mean, he's gotten better. He was a great player, and it seems he's gotten better this year.
Mike, listen, you played on that great front. You know all about gangrene and this Eagles defense. And this, watching Jalen Carter, in my eyes, Fletcher Cox had an amazing career. He's better. He's, Jerome meets Ndamukong Suh. He's on the field the entire game. He takes every snap and he doesn't wear down. He's a complete beast. And he has been such the difference. Because remember, they don't have a lot of great edge rush. Now, Nolan Smith has developed some. Brandon Graham got hurt. He should be back for the Super Bowl. Everybody thinks he's going to be back for it. But really, their pressure starts in the middle with Carter. And he has been a game wrecker, man. You got to double him. You look at Washington last week. Again, look at the Rams. You brought up the Rams. And when it came to Stafford, he saved the game. Not only did he have the sack on Stafford as they're driving, he also had the punch out on Kyron Williams that when the Rams had the momentum after the safety. He is just a big-time player, man. And then you got Zach Bond behind him. And this is another one. Fangio, originally they looked at Bond as an edge guy, right, from New Orleans. And Fangio said, no, we're going to put him at linebacker. And he's just all over the field. The other piece of it is Cooper DeJean. You mentioned Mitchell, who's elite, right, on the outside. But Cooper DeJean in the middle of the field gives them a presence they haven't had. He's also one, and it's going to be a great matchup because, I know Andy really well, and you know what he's going to try to do. He's going to try to get the ball, those quick hitters to Worthy on the outside, and that's been Cooper DeJean's specialty. Washington tried it, right, and he fights through all those stalk blocks, and he blows it up, man. That's going to be a big matchup, and that's the advantage of the Eagles' defense under Fangio is they have the perfect kind of players that fits the scheme.
Yeah, it really has. And Dad mentioned it, the contrast of last year to this year where they filled every hole they needed to on that defense on the back end at the linebacker level. And not just filled it, but filled it with guys that are playing at Pro Bowl, All-Pro, in Zach Bond's case, Defensive Player of the Year potential. You mentioned the challenge on the other side here. What is the chief concern going into this game. This city and this team knows Andy Reid very well. Obviously, this is a rematch from a couple of years ago, but as you look at this matchup with a week and change to go before we actually put toe to leather, what's your biggest concern with this Chiefs team who's played their best football in the last 3 or 4 games?
Yeah, and listen, I know Andy and Spags really well, and it's going to be interesting because he's not going to let Saquon run wild, right? And he's going to pressure, as we saw him do it to Allen. He'll do it to anybody. And as soon as you get into the red zone, Spags is going to unleash everyone. And that's going to be something to be interesting because here's what Jalen's done. Now, he's done really well on the quick reads. If he has to he has a quick read and the ball will be out, he's great. But when he has to go through his progressions is when things start to go awry a little bit. And that's going to be an interesting matchup. They haven't been in 3rd and long a lot, right? They win first down. The other issue is they're a front-running team in the sense that they play with the lead. They don't trail. And that's a big part because, you never have to get out of your running game. I think the biggest thing is the Eagles cannot lose Barkley, right? Like they have to stay with Barkley, even if Kansas City, because, Andy is great at his scripts. So his scripted plays, I could see an early score. The Eagles usually start off slow with Fangio on defense, and then they shut things down. So if Andy gets a lead, you can't go away from Barkley.
And speaking of Barkley, the Super Bowl record is Super Bowl 22, Timothy Smith for Washington, 204 yards. Do we think Barkley has a shot at that? The 5th is Terrell Davis at 157. I got to believe, and the 10th is 124 yards. I got to believe Barkley at least gets in the top 10.
Yes. His total's like 115. And I'm going, you got to pound the over because here's what we know with Saquon. Listen, guys. You guys are football guys. You guys are leatherheads. I've never seen anything like this. He's Aaron Judge. All the home runs. If the Eagles aren't winning at the end, you saw Will Shipley take it this distance. Saquon would have taken another one to the house. He just hits home runs. And you know what? There'll be a couple of times when, he gets 2 and he gets 3 and he gets 4 and the defense wins. But then he's going to get to the second level. And that's what makes him so dangerous. With this offensive line, you just can't stack the box and fill every gap and take him away. That's the problem, man. He is a major headache. If Reggie Jackson was Mr. October, he's Mr. January and soon to be Mr. February.
That is certainly the hope for Eagles fans there. And you're right. It is slugging percentage and erasing gaps and angles with Saquon Barkley all over the field. No doubt here. Anthony, this was awesome, man. We appreciate all the time. Everyone, again, check him out. The Fellas, Saturdays from 5 to 9 a.m. Eastern. Check out the All City Network doing a phenomenal job with everything Eagles in the lead up to this game here. We appreciate it, brother.
We love you guys, boys. You guys are the best. The Golic boys.
Thanks, man.
There we go. There's a shot. Forget your morning coffee, man. Just take in some of this right now, and you'll be fired up and ready to go for the day. And Dad, listen, that's the kind of confidence that Eagles fans should have right now with the roster they've built up and the way that they've performed this season. But we know, and this city knows Andy Reid all too well and what he's capable of heading into this game.
As I said, as a former D lineman, there's nothing more demoralizing than an offense lining up and just running the ball down your throat. And listen, that's what Philadelphia does. That's what they do. We can have all the Sirianni, Jalen Hurts talk as you want, but you win how you win. And Jalen passed great last game, but this is a running football team, a pass second team. And when they can line up and run the ball, they are dangerous, and that is just a tough way to be losing on the field if, in fact, they build up a lead against Kansas City, which many people don't think they're going to do. But what Anthony said is key, stick with the running game.
Yeah, because I think Kansas City is going to try and make Jalen Hurts pass his way through this thing. We'll see if results may vary. Coming up next, Adam Silver shocking the NBA world with a new proposal. Do we agree with 10-minute quarters? Next.
Welcome back to GoJo and Golic. In the NBA, there was another offensive explosion for the Thunder, and you guessed it, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander was the author against the Warriors. SGA posted 21 first-quarter points. He finished the night with 52 points, 2 points off his career high that he set just a week earlier against the Utah Jazz. He shot 16 of 29 from the field and went 18 of 21 from the free throw line. Now, despite all that, the Warriors won the game as Steph Curry passed Ray Allen for 27th place on the all-time scoring list. The Thunder still hold this top spot in the West. Up next, a 10-minute change from Adam Silver, ? Plus more to discuss in the NFL.
That I'm a fan of, and I'm probably in a minority. As we get more involved in global basketball, the NBA is the only league that plays 48 minutes. And I am a fan of 4 10-minute quarters. I'm not sure that many others are. I mean, putting aside what it means for records and things like that, you know, I think that a 2-hour format for a game is more consistent with sort of modern television habits. I don't think people in arenas aren't asking us to shorten the game, but I think as a television program, being 2 hours, that's Olympic basketball, is 2 hours. You know, college basketball, of course, is
But
is
if
40
you
minutes.
like it, I'd say it has kind of a little bit of a push there.
Yeah, but it's such a dramatic change.
All right, what do you guys think? Trying to get those television rating numbers up there? Got to bump those numbers up. Those are rookie numbers.
Yeah, so that was NBA Commissioner Adam Silver on with Dan Patrick the other day, who, Dan Patrick as an interviewer, just an absolute gem. But throwing out the idea of 10-minute quarters, talking about some of the different things, especially in the lead up to the NBA All-Star Game, Dad. We get a lot of these State of the Union type things for most NBA, most league officials, I should say, most commissioners around these different leagues. And so Adam Silver, hearing the conversation about what's gone on with ratings in the first half of the season for the NBA, even for a league that just signed a big, bright new television deal, thinking constantly about ways to improve it, the same sort of thinking that netted us the in-season tournament, the play-in tournament before the postseason, all of which were Adam Silver ideas that he enjoyed here. Dad, I appreciate that he's thinking and trying, but at the same time, especially if the justification is just, hey, we're thinking about television viewing habits. I think the average NBA game is like 2 hours and 15 minutes, 2 hours and 17 minutes. That is not the place my mind goes where I think about the problems that may or may not plague this league.
Well, I mean, baseball went to the pitch clock to shorten their games, and it worked, shorten their games. So basically, it's twofold. The basketball is trying to fit into a 2-hour window, of which they are just outside of right now. And as he said, they're the only league that in basketball that plays 48 minutes. Everybody else is 40 minutes. The other thing that it could produce is stars playing longer in games. Stars maybe resting less frequently in games or for games, taking a game off, may play more minutes during games. So that's really the two big things. Go ahead.
Well, no, I was just going to say that as a justification I could hear more of, but that wasn't what Adam Silver offered up. He's talking about TV windows and viewing habits and these things. I think your justification and your reasoning there is a far more interesting line for this. Now, we heard from plenty of coaches, Tom Thibodeau and Mike Malone got asked about this after the Knicks game last night that we can get to, and both advocated for keeping things the way they are. I think it was Michael Malone that said, I hope we don't become Barnum and Bailey doing whatever we have to do to chase the high of viewership this next go-around. But, Dad, I do think the notion of finding creative ways to get more of your stars on the court more consistently is something that is worthy of merit. This just feels like the trial balloon you float up knowing it's going to get rejected so that the next idea is received a little bit more kindly.
What's another idea? Is it lessening games? And again, when you're lessening games, are you taking money out of the owner's pockets? And again, I continue to say at owners' meetings, they hear blah, 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 blah until money is talked about, and then their ears perk up. Is there more money going into their pocket or is there money coming out of their pocket? That's when they perk up and pay attention. So again, is it to fit in a 2-hour window, to get the stars to play longer? But the other side of that is just how you mess up the record book, right? I mean, you just all of a sudden records in the past are safe. I mean, I don't like that in college football that they count bowl games to your season stats. I mean, I think that messes. I don't know why you do that. It just messes up what went on. They changed that. So giving players an extra game and now an extra few games with the playoffs. So that's just a kind of aside.
But I do think if we were going to power rank the sports that have hallowed records, where that is such a part of what we do, football's way near the bottom. Like, I don't think we prioritize that element of the game nearly as much as others in the way that we grade performance here. It's much more vibes-based, but baseball would be at the top, and then I think basketball would be right behind that in terms of how they revere records.
I agree. I just said that as an aside. I don't know why they made the bowl games count for regular season. I think it's ridiculous. But you're right. They're third in the line of baseball, basketball, as far as records. We know baseball is by far the number one as far as the records. But yeah, and the other thing was actually floated out there. Silver also said that awarding 2 free throws to shooters who are fouled on 3-point attempts has been mentioned in conversations. What? I mean, my initial thought on that is if a team is down 3 and they're shooting a 3 to tie, why wouldn't you just foul them? Just foul them. They're going to the line and only shooting 2. I mean, that to me, that's just my initial reaction of seeing that. But I don't think any of this is going to get passed, by the way. I don't think 10-minute quarters are going to get passed. I agree. I think it's a trial balloon going up as to other tweaks that may happen out there. But that would really, really affect the all-time record books, and I just don't think you want to go down that road.
Well, yeah, and I was thinking about that because to your point, Dad, relative to the money coming in here, what affects it more, shortening the game windows themselves or shortening the season? Because both would certainly affect records, although if you took games off the season, you could still buy, points per game records, things that are siphoned down that way. kind of have a similar understanding of where guys are at historically, the 10-minute quarters are going to throw that off a lot. And I know the NBA has a lot of advanced stats that help somewhat mitigate these things, but you'd be really wandering into the weeds to try and go and show your general fan, the average NBA fan, not the, real ball lover and knower who's going to focus on all those deep stats, that would get there. But I think, Dad, from an ownership perspective, shortening the game quarters themselves where, hey, you know what, the broadcast window wouldn't be shortened by that much, so are you losing a ton of ad revenue night in and night out? You're not changing the amount of ticketed opportunities for fans to come. Like you said, with having more of your better players play more often, you might actually increase the amount of people that want to come out to those games if all of a sudden, this is really what they're trying to account for. When you boil it all down, it's we're trying to get more of the stars to play more often to mitigate some of the load management conversation. And then we're trying to work with attention spans. That's really the two things they seem to be up against right now. And part of that, the 3-point conversation might just be a response to, hey, are there too many threes criticism that gets lobbed their way, which I guess is something else we can offer up there. But those are really the things it seems like right now the NBA is trying to war against.
Yeah, they're floating around a 4-point line since the 3-point seems to be the shot. Is there a 4-point line to take players even further away from the basket? And I get the attention. Listen, Adam Silver is living in the now. He understands the attention span of everybody is less, so he's trying to fit into a nice 2-hour box. But this is the sport with the most whistles as well, right? I mean, this is the sport that stops action. Now, baseball, it stopped after every pitch, but they tried to speed that up with a pitch clock, and it's worked. It's taken minutes, more than a few minutes off the average time of the game. But in basketball, you're not getting away from the fact that it's the most whistles there are in a game, the most stoppages in an NBA game.
But that's nothing. No one's asked for basketball to be shorter. Like, never in the complaints about this sport has that been something that I feel like I've heard the average fan utter is, oh, these damn basketball games, they're too long. Like, everyone said that about baseball. It was the most obvious elephant in the room for people that were casuals coming to the game. No one's been like, basketball needs to go faster, has a pace problem. The pace is fine in basketball. It's up and down. It moves very well. It's just that on any given night when I turn on one of these primetime games, I know I feel like I've got a 50-50 shot of actually seeing the players that I want to see play in these games, and the ones that will quite honestly help me judge what kind of team they're going to be when it comes towards the postseason basketball that's important to us anyway. So, Dad, I just feel like, again, the reason I feel like this is something Adam Silver has thrown out here to get the worst of the reaction out of the way is because I don't think anyone's asking for basketball games to be shorter. I don't think that's a problem.
Yeah, and I don't think it's going to go to 10-minute quarters. I don't think that's going to happen. So I think it's null and void about that. Now, there may be other tweaks to the game that we end up talking about, but what that would do to the record books, I think, would just blow them up. So I do not think, while it's a talking point for talking heads like us and all around the country, once he uttered those words on the Dan Patrick Show, I mean, I don't think it's going to have any legs to it at all.
No, I would agree. And so it'll be interesting to see what comes next. I think that is clear for this, is that they are thinking. And when people like Adam Silver are uttering this in public, that's important to note. But I don't know about what comes next for them in that regard here. Dad, interesting thing last night that popped up here. I want to get to the Caitlin Clark news around the All-Star game in just a second here. But where are you at on Draymond Green continuing to hate on Karl Anthony Towns here? Last night, Towns and the New York Knicks go out and play a great game against the Jokic-led Nuggets. Nikola Jokic, foul trouble early on, didn't play a lot in the first quarter or in the first half of this game. And the Knicks go and continue what's been a great run for them here. Jalen Brunson and Josh Hart, sensational, as was Towns. But Draymond Green tweeted this: cat in a full front on Joker. Even if you win the game, it don't matter. You will never hold the respect from an opponent to win at the highest level. Pride must make you sit down and guard even if you give up 40. Winning is a mindset, and in order to win a championship, you have to win the mental edge. That's why only a few guys per era will win the championships. They understand that thing. Dad, Draymond just being a hater, or does he have any sort of point here?
Oh, I mean, listen, there's been a point about Karl Anthony Towns in defense. I mean, we know what he likes to do best, and that's shoot threes. But that's just Draymond being Draymond. I mean, Draymond is going to needle somebody to no end, and continue to needle somebody because we're in the day and age of the current player having a microphone and having an outlet. And we know his type of – I think – hell, you're getting it right now. You don't even have to wait for him to retire to join the podcast world. He's already in it, and he gives you gold today of what he does. So, yeah, it's nothing Draymond says shocks me.
No, certainly not there. As, by the way, the Golden State Warriors got a nice win last night. Now, Draymond not in the lineup for said win, but a nice win over the Oklahoma City Thunder. And, yeah, and it's one of those things, Dad, in watching the Knicks, God, what a fun basketball team. I know the same concern exists every year of do they get ground down by Tibbs by the time you get to the postseason, and will they run out of gas at a certain point? But there's no denying what Karl has done in helping space the floor for them works so well with Jalen Brunson, who continues to be one of my favorite basketball players to watch. Like, he is probably a guy that I would say is like your favorite football player, one of their favorite basketball players, just because of how he plays the game. Doesn't seem like a guy who's overtly a great athlete, but finds a way to create space and open stuff up for his teammates. They're just a gritty basketball team that also has a bunch of highly skilled guys. And for Cat Dad, I mean, you played with a million different types of teammates before. The one thing that always seemed common for me was I never wanted someone to be what they're not. And I felt like for so long in Minnesota, Karl Anthony Towns got pushed into trying to be something that he wasn't in terms of being the tough guy or trying to be the bad guy or trying to go out there and be physical on the block. He's shown some of that in spurts offensively this year. But defensively, while he has actually defended Joker pretty well in the last couple of years and helped eliminate the Denver Nuggets from the playoffs last year when he was in Minnesota, I also don't need him to go out there and do that stuff. Just because Draymond's approach to analysis is the old Shaq method of just do it the way I did it or you're wrong doesn't necessarily mean that's the way it's got to be. I've been critical of Cat in recent years, but it works for this Knicks team, and you just need to be who you are and who you feel best as in order for us to go out and win. And he's found himself into the right environment for that in New York in a way that I didn't anticipate. I didn't think this fit would work as well for him there, and it has so far.
Yeah, he's scoring just under 25 points a game, almost 14 rebounds a game, shooting almost 43% from three-point line. He's doing what he does, right? And this team is third in the conference right now. They're going to battle for the conference title to play in the finals, and he's a big reason why. And you're right, you don't ask someone to be what they're not. So for Draymond to kind of punk on him, it's like, wait, this is what Cat is. This is how he plays. This is what he does. And oh, by the way, he's doing it on a real good team.
Yeah, and listen, Draymond, entitled to his opinion. A guy with a bunch of championships on the resume to be able to go and say these things. But it feels like he's bringing some of that energy that he used to have for Rudy Gobert over to the Karl Anthony Towns party. And I don't know. I'll be interested to see come postseason time. Only one of those teams right now looks like they're positioned to go anywhere near a championship this postseason, and it's Karl Anthony Towns Knicks. Coming up next, let's head down to Mobile and check in on the Senior Bowl, find out who of the stars of tomorrow could be best for your team. Next on GoJo and Golic. Dad, I forget, did you play in any postseason All-Star games? Was there anything akin to the Senior Bowl when you were coming out for the NFL draft in 1985?
Yeah, it was the akin to it was the Hula Bowl that they played in. But I had my my first shoulder surgery of 10 after my senior year regular season. So I had my shoulder operated. And I actually went to the combine and couldn't perform. And I just got poked and prodded by doctors. I couldn't do any of the runs or the lifts at the Senior Bowl, which was at Arizona State back then. We ran outside.
The combine was at Arizona State, you said.
The combine was at Arizona State, yes.
Wow.
But yeah, so I was on the shelf. I didn't get to play in any like the Senior Bowl, which again was the Hula Bowl.
Gotcha. Okay, it's interesting, like, because it does seem like a relatively more recent phenomenon that these have become a real big part of the pre-draft evaluation process for a lot of people. Whether it's the East-West Shrine Bowl, whether it's the the Senior Bowl down in Mobile that we're getting ready to hopefully talk to Trevor Sikkema, Pro Football Focus's lead draft analyst, down at the Senior Bowl and get some insight on what's going on down there. I played in the Raycom Stars and Stripes game, which was a remnant of the old Blue-Gray All-Star game, and obviously it did a whole hell of a lot for me. They did a great job down there. They did their absolute best. We're the third-tier bowl down there. Dad, the reason that week was most memorable for me had nothing to do with any of the play on the field or the practices where I felt like I acquitted myself decently well. It was the fact that was the week on a bus loaded with players from the SEC and the Big Ten and all these other conferences where I found out about the Manti Te'o, Lene Kekua fake girlfriend stuff. That news broke that week when I was down at that game. And so I'm on a bus with a bunch of SEC dudes just getting clowned into the sun. It was me and Robbie Toma, who went to high school with Manti, one of Manti's good friends, and I felt terrible for her. I mean, obviously, he knew Manti and what had gone on in that situation better than anybody. And we had, all known what had been reported, what had gone on with the team that year. But getting that news that week in that particular location did not make it a good time for us and all the insults that got lobbed at us on Manti's behalf down there. So a different memory for bowl season for me after my final game in Notre Dame's uniform.
Yeah, I'd imagine you and especially Robbie Toma, again, you mentioned a high school teammate of Manti and then obviously a receiver on the Notre Dame football team, had to basically hole up in his hotel room and didn't go anywhere for getting nailed by the media.
Yeah, no, not a great time there and not a lot of answers that we had at that point because we were finding it out just like everybody else. But that's showbiz, baby, here. I'd imagine there's no news like that breaking this week down in Mobile at the Senior Bowl right now. So why don't we head out there and talk to Trevor Sikkema, again, Pro Football Focus's lead draft analyst, does a phenomenal job, the NFL Stock Exchange programming that you absolutely need to make part of your life cycle in the lead up to the NFL draft. So, Trev, good morning, man. How you doing?
I'm doing fantastic. The Raycom Stars and Stripes Bowl sounds like some sort of edition of like a Marvel versus Capcom like arcade machine. Like that's what that sounds like to me when you said that you were in that. So that's immediately what popped into my head. You being a fighter character getting down in an all-star event.
It's what it felt like, Trev, and quite honestly would be a better memory of that than the one that I just laid out here. So definitely has big video game Marvel energy in that. What about the energy down in Mobile right now? You were at, I saw the Shrine Bowl before this. You're at the Senior Bowl now. What's been your biggest takeaway so far as we're now rolling into practices on Thursday for this game?
This was touted as one of the best, or I should say more concentrated trench groups that we've had in Mobile for a while now. And okay, maybe it's not like the guys that are going to go, like number 3, number 4 in the NFL draft, but I feel like a lot of the guys that you would want to know in this class, a pretty deep D-line class, a pretty deep O-line class, a very interesting O-line class, I should say. Man, these guys have been going at it. And something that I've really loved about this year's event is, you guys know this, day one of an all-star event, especially with those one-on-ones, D-line, O-line, it is set up for the D-line to really dominate, right? Offensive line, they haven't really watched tape on these guys. They don't know their moves. They don't know how powerful they are. They don't know how fast they are. And yet day one, O-line came out and punched this talented D-line in the mouth. And it was awesome to see. Gray Zabel was great. Ariante Ursary was great. Ozzie Trapillo was great. Like there were so many of these O-linemen that I went, hold on, is this day one? Have these guys been like watching tape on these guys for a couple of weeks? Because they know their moves, they know how to stop them. But D-line punched back a little bit for day 2. So very intrigued to see what happens here on day 3.
You're so correct. The D-line is set up to win one-on-one pass rush. I mean, it's just meant to be, because there's no threat of run at all. Of what if it's going to be pass or run? That's pretty amazing. As far as the quarterback position, what quarterback has a chance to improve his stock the most?
Man, I think the answer to that question would have been one of 2 guys, Jalen Milroe or Jackson Dart. I think these are 2 guys who, depending on who you talk to, can be viewed as anything from a first-round pick, maybe the 3rd quarterback off of the board, to somebody that you might take on the day 3 range. It's just such a wide range of outcomes here. And, for Milroe, I'll start with him. Obviously, a ton of arm talent, a ton of athleticism. There's a reason why people can't quit him, if you will, even though the consistent accuracy and the ball placement hasn't been there yet over the last couple of years that we saw with him as a starter at Alabama. People were hoping, okay, in Mobile, new setting, not as much Alabama pressure. Maybe he plays a little bit more accurately, consistently. Unfortunately, guys, we haven't really seen that this week. He's still given us a couple of really nice throws, but it's been within some inconsistent throws here and there. And I'll tell you, the biggest takeaway that I have from Jalen Milroe this week, hand size. And I know we've blown this up way too much before when we went through the Joe Burrow phase, but it actually matters for Milroe because his throwing motion is so twitched up. It is so fast that having 8 3/4 inch hand size, that's just 2nd percentile for the NFL. It affects how you grip and control the football. And the faster your throwing motion is, the more control you have to have on that ball. So now I'm sitting here wondering, will Milroe ever really be as accurate as we need him to be, knowing that the hand size is not going to change and the speed of the throwing motion is probably not going to change either. So we've seen a little bit of good and bad there. Jackson Dart, again, has had some nice throws himself. But the intriguing thing about Jackson Dart is, he had 943 dropbacks at Ole Miss over the last 2 years. 9 of them came under center. Probably a handful of them are victory formation, right? The guy just never plays under center. He's had 2 or 3 fumbles under center alone over the last 2 days. And so if you are not in a shotgun only type of offense, it's just something that you got to think about when it comes to this guy. So those are dudes that had a lot on the table to improve, but some ways that they have and the ways that they haven't.
Amazing to think that a guy going into the NFL has to learn how to take a snap, yet that's where we are. So those are 2 names we know. How about a name that nobody really knows, and that's a Canadian quarterback? There hasn't been a Canadian quarterback, I think, in 21, 22 years. Taylor, and Elgersma, I hope I'm even pronouncing it correctly. What has he been doing out there to try and be the first Canadian in a couple of decades to play quarterback in the NFL?
Yeah, it's fun. It's fun kind of getting to root for him because you're right. Elgersma he's the underdog of the group, and every time he makes a nice throw, I'm just like, all right, Maple Leaf, all right. And you're kind of noting that in your little scouting report, and you're just saying all right, I see you. So no, he has had a couple of nice throws. Obviously, him coming to this event, Mike, like you were talking about, you're going up against guys that you've never played with, first and foremost, these wide receivers. So the timing's a little bit off, but it's also a competition level. That's obviously a pretty big jump for a guy like this. So he has shown that he's not totally out of place. And I think that's the most important part. And really, it's the arm strength part of it. Scouts, when you see a guy like this, who it's really unfamiliar territory, they're not really looking to see, okay, well, how polished is this player? Am I taking this guy in the first round? No. That's not the conversation. We're really trying to parse out, is he an NFL player? Or is he not? Does he have at least NFL talent that I go, all right, on day 3, let's take a chance on this kid, or maybe a priority UDFA, whatever it is. But he has had a couple of nice throws, and I want to give him credit there. He does not look lost. He does not look out of place. It hasn't been a spectacular week, but it's been fun to watch him compete with these other guys.
So there's the quarterbacks, and then there's going to be the guys designed to get after the quarterbacks. And we've seen in recent years, I think you look at only as far as this Los Angeles Rams recent D-line draft class to say, hey, you can find impact starters in a lot of cases with this group's coming out of college. You mentioned the D-line punch back. Who's been your favorite of that bunch, and you has a chance to really has a chance to move up in the first round?
Mike Green from Marshall, I mean, he is just a dude. He really is. I mean, I know that we talk about some of these other edge rushers at the very top, the Ohio State boys we've talked about at the edge rush spot, James Pierce Jr., Abdul Carter. Like, there's a ton of different edge rushers in this draft that I think a lot of teams are going to be happy with when they come away with them. But whoever comes away with Mike Green Jr., it is going to be to the moon. This is somebody who is a redshirt sophomore at Marshall, had a breakout year this past year, 91.6 PFF pass rush grade and a 90.6 run defense grade as well. So he's an all-around edge rusher. He's got shorter arms, arm length definitely below the 50th percentile for the position. But what you love to see from him is he showed up at a solid 251 pounds. And I mean, it's legit weight. It's not like he just chugged a bunch of water like for a boxing fight or a UFC fight or something like that. He looks twitched up. He looks powerful. And he had the best rep of the day yesterday where he looked like a bat out of hell. I wonder if the whole D-line, I wonder if the D-line coach went to this defensive line group after day one and said, these dudes are taking money out of your pocket. What are you going to do about it here on day two? And Mike Green, if that was the message, heard it loud and clear. He went up one rep in particular, against Josh Connerly Jr., who's the offensive tackle from Oregon, projected first-round pick as well. Just hit him with a bull rush with such great first-step explosiveness, such great leverage, got right under his pads, and forklifted this dude into the air, getting straight back into the quarterback. It was one of the cleanest wins that I've seen at the Senior Bowl in a long time. And that's the dude. I mean, there's a lot of guys that I could name here, but that is the dude who, to me, has had the best day over the last two, Mike Green.
Be remiss if we didn't ask, being two Notre Dame guys, about the few Notre Dame players that are there. And I was going to say about the Ohio State as well, but I don't think there's any Ohio State players there. As far as going into this game after playing the most games in college football history, of how they're holding up there.
Yeah, I mean, Riley looks great. I know, some guys were asking Riley Leonard, like, hey, like, how's the body feel? And he's like, I'm still sore, like, from hits that I took in the national championship. It wasn't that long ago. But honestly, a lot of these guys, like, haven't played football in a little bit. You can kind of tell that Riley Leonard, it's just like another game for him. Like, he was playing football, competitive football at the very highest level not too long ago. So there was no adjustment period for him. He's been able to hit the ground running, and he's had some nice throws as well. I think consistency-wise, Riley may have had the best week of anybody so far, two practices in here in Mobile. But somebody else at Notre Dame that has really been standing out that I really like in this class that I think is underrated is Jack Kaiser, the linebacker. I mean, the speed and athleticism has shown so much from him at this event. I felt like it popped to him on tape. I felt like he's been a top 100 type of a linebacker, probably a day three linebacker, but somebody with a lot of experience. He was at Notre Dame for a long time, consistent starter over the last couple of years. And when you're at these all-star events, it's not full tackling. You can't go to the ground. You can't wrap guys up. So it's hard for linebackers to, like, really show their stuff all the way. But when you get into a spot where, okay, I recognize this running back's coming out of the flat, I got to head to the sideline, I got to beat him to the angle. And when you are able to do that, you in your head can say, all right, that's a tackle. He made it there. He was able to cover it. And so that coverage ability, that movement ability from Jack Kaiser, and then that anticipation, that recognition, you've already seen flashes of that here at the Senior Bowl. So I think he's been a standout as well.
Fun group to watch, and we're just getting started here with some of the guys like that are going to fill out these rosters and help teams try and get to the stage that we're getting ready to see the Chiefs and the Eagles on. It all starts with this pre-draft process, and as they are wont to say, the draft starts in Mobile. So, Trev, always great catching up with you, man. Really appreciate the time, and I'm sure we'll talk to you a bunch as we get towards the Combine and the draft this spring.
Sounds good. Appreciate it, guys. Anytime.
Thanks, man.
Awesome stuff. Again, Trevor Sikkema, check him out, Pro Football Focus, lead draft analyst, the NFL Stock Exchange, ton of fun stuff, and just a fountain of information. Dad, I will say that Mike Green rep there, bull rushing in one-on-ones in the All-Star game. I don't know how I feel about that necessarily, but it was fun to ooh and ah at and watch. I don't know how I feel about that as a point of parliamentary procedure.
Let me ask you a question. In a game, will a D lineman occasionally bull rush an offensive lineman?
They will, no doubt, but you know that one-on-ones aren't real. It's made up fairy tale land.
Oh, I know, and it definitely favors the defense, but that's part of the moves. There's outside move, inside move, quickness move, and then there's, hey, hit them with a bull rush when they're expecting someone else and knock them on their ass. Ain't nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with that at all.
I'm grading that take from you as an F. Coming up next, my dad will grade NFL coaching hires, your dog's pictures, the art that you had your students in class do, and any other number of things we can throw in front of him. Next. All right, welcome back to GoJo and Golic. Mike Golic Jr., Mike Golic Sr., Jesse Cofield here with you guys. And if there is one thing we have established over the years of doing this show now, during my dad's long career at ESPN, guy hates grading stuff here. Doesn't like it when people grade his test. Didn't like it back in grade school when his teacher graded his terror art project and tore him down about that. And certainly doesn't like having to grade things like head coaching hires in the NFL. And so we thought we'd make an entire segment where we make my dad not only have to grade that, but anything else at GoJo and Golic on Twitter, on Blue Sky, anything else that you wanted him to grade, we're going to throw. Dad, what's your aversion to grades when it comes to all of this? Why are you so against the thing that is the bedrock of what we do in sports talk?
Well, now grading with my terror art in kindergarten was a little harsh by the teacher. Let me tell you, that stuck with me to where I let it affect me to this day, where I still draw stick figures and I can't do anything artistic. I don't give a damn anymore at 62.
You had a class project, like a terror art project. What did your teacher say to you again when you brought your project up? And what grade was this in?
I mean, she didn't even grade it. She just said it was awful. I mean, how do you say that to a kindergarten kid? You know, you're sitting there trying. I'm trying to do terror art. Yeah, it wasn't good.
Sorry,
okay, I admit it.
What are you saying? Terror art?
Like you tear pieces of paper into something artistic. Terror art. I don't know, Jesse.
It was a project for kindergarten project. And this woman scarred my dad for life.
You guys are saying this like we should know what terror art is. Nobody here's ever heard of that. Okay, so you were tearing off paper to make
regardless, it was a kindergarten project that a teacher just, I think, ripped me unmercifully about, which I was stunned, and it affected me to this day. Yeah,
terrible.
it was a horrible thought that I probably embellish as the years go on. And as far as grading, listen, grading head coaches, it's only first-time head coaches. Like, how the hell do you want me to grade Brian Schottenheimer, Liam Cohn, Ben Johnson, and Aaron Glenn? They're first-time head coaches. They were the coordinators. I have zero clue. You know what grade I give them all? Eyes. Incomplete. I'll grade Vrabel. I'll grade Pete Carroll. But I will not grade the first-time head coaches. Anybody who grades them is just pulling it out of their ass because they have no idea how they're going to do. Zero clue how a first-time head coach is going to perform once they sit in the big chair.
I give the Brian Schottenheimer a C-1. Bad process in the lead up to that. Cowboys were behind the chains the whole time. Liam Cohen, slightly better. The Duval thing kind of weirded me out, but I'll give that one a B. I've been high on Liam for a while. Aaron Glenn, that's an A. Ben Johnson, that's an A. You knew those were going to be the candidates everyone wanted. You went out and got them. Aaron Glenn's got all the charisma in the world in front of the microphone, bopping and booping with the New York media. Ben Johnson came in and immediately took shots at Matt LaFleur. That was a little weird, but we know he's an offensive genius. You needed him to revitalize. Dad, it's about process. We're grading process in this spot. Why is that so hard for you to understand? Look, I just did it for you there. It's easy. Now you try. Do some of the old coaches.
Oh, no. Vrabel, I'll give an A. I mean, a culture change in New England, and he was a former head coach, so we kind of have a precedent of what he actually did as a head coach. So, yeah, I give Vrabel an A. The only reason I dropped down Pete Carroll to a B is it's not about relating to players because he is a young 74 years old, but he's still 74 years old. And I think about the longevity of him coaching the Raiders. You know, you hire a coach, you want a coach to be there for, you know, maybe not Mike Tomlin long. The Pittsburgh Steelers are just different than anybody else. But you like them to be there for a while. And I don't know. I mean, while I get Mike or Pete Carroll, you know, acts young and seems young, it's still, he is 74. How much rope does he get, you know, in coaching? How many years to kind of keep that culture or change that culture in the Raiders?
Look at you doing some grades. You're doing pretty good. So while we've got you in this nice groove here, Dad, we submitted to the people on social media to have you grade some other things here. And so I want to try this out here. George Escalante tweeted this one in at us. This should be an easy one. Grade the Saints coaching search, how they've done the job of going to search a head coach. What grade would you give for them?
Well, I mean, I would probably give them, I'm sure everybody would say an F, but I'd probably give them more a C because they can search all they want. Nobody wants the job. That's obviously their fault for the organization that they run. But the search, they're trying to get people in there to interview. They just keep getting turned down. So the act of the search, they're doing properly, but everybody's just turning them down because it's not a great job.
So that's an F, is what you're telling me. I agree with you. I think it's an F, but it's definitely an F, right?
I said the searching process is probably a C or a D. That the team itself, the as far as the job, is an F because nobody wants it.
All right, Dad, what about this one? This one from Jones QC on Blue Sky here. The series finale of Seinfeld. What grade would you give that?
Oh, that was awful. It was awful. They were all in a different town. They were all in jail because they watched a car get jacked, and they didn't do anything. They just filmed it. They were like New Yorkers. They didn't do anything to help, and they all went to trial, and they brought back a lot of characters from Seinfeld to be witnesses, and then they just ended up in a jail cell, and that's how it ended. I did not like how it ended at all. I give that a D.
All right, that's a solid, understandable grade there. You and Mom watch a lot of Seinfeld, a lot of daytime TV in general, so I trust your opinion on that pretty implicitly here. Can we pull up Matt Ryan's Blue Sky post asking my dad to grade his dog's outfits on this? We are obviously a dog-loving family. My parents have pugs and bulldogs. My brother's got a chocolate lab. My sister's got bulldogs. And so, Dad, grade this dog's outfits here. Where the first picture appears to be this beautiful sweet baby wearing a donut necklace, and the next one more of a nightgown.
Wow.
There is literally no dog picture I will not give an A to. Yeah. Literally no dog picture. If you're showing you every dog is cute in its own way, I mean, A, absolute A for any dog picture.
It's like the tear art thing. You should have gotten an A on that, and all dogs get an A.
Yeah. Boom. It's exactly right, Jesse. Exactly right.
Yeah.
All dogs get an A. Love the donut necklace. Know your audience around here. That's an easy A+ all around for the group here. What about this one? Let's pull up this one from PSP Cubbies on Blue Sky. I refurbished these kitchen cabinets into a little island peninsula space for my kitchen. Would love to hear your dad's thoughts on that. Dad, what do you make of this? The guy took the cabinets and then ended up making you call it a peninsula when it's attached in the kitchen here. Looks like did a pretty good job. I love the handles he picked out for that.
I do like it as well. I like it as well. Again, a peninsula. I get it because it is attached, but I like the ingenuity of using the cabinets that are already there. That's saving money, and I'd love to be able to be a handyman to be able to do something like that as well. That my dad had that, your brother Jake has that, you don't have it, I don't have it, but to be able to do something yourself is pretty impressive.
Jesse does not appear as enthused.
I'm just confused by the art. What do you mean those cabinets were there? There were just 2 cabinets sitting on the ground? What?
Or in his house, and that he just refurbished into that.
And he just slapped them on the floor?
Those are questions for another day.
I don't know.
I want to get to one more here, Dad. Someone asked you to also grade former Eagles players that have worn the number 90. And this prompted me to go look it up on Pro Football Reference. And they actually apply an approximate value to everyone that's worn that jersey number. Dad, you are, according to Pro Football Reference, the second most impactful player in Eagles history to wear the number 90 behind only Corey Simon. So congratulations.
How about that? Corey Simon from Florida State was a first-round pick. Now, Jordan Davis is eventually going to pass me. William Perry, I don't think, was in number 90 enough. Those are really the only names I know. Corey Simon, Jordan Davis, and Michael Perry, who again, or William Perry. William Perry. I don't think William will be it, or Jordan Davis. I think eventually will pass me. But I think I'll hang in the top 3, which is a bronze, which I'll be happy about. I have the silver now. I think I'll only fall as low as a bronze, so I'm happy with that.
A solid output there. Thank you to AngelFan91 for that one. Thank you to everyone who submitted. We'll have to have Golic's grades come back here soon so we can get more of your things in front of my dad to do the thing he hates the most. This, that, and the third next. All right, time to finish off the show the way we always do. This, that, and the third. 3 quick stories to send you into the rest of the day. Make sure you download, subscribe, rate, review us, leave us a 5-star rating. Watch us here Monday through Friday from 8 to 10 a.m. Eastern on the DraftKings Network. Subscribe to our YouTube channel, GoJo and Golic there. Plenty of great stuff. Again, the Super Bowl coming up next week, so we are going to be live in New Orleans from Radio Row all next week in the lead up to the big game here. Ton of great guests already on the books that we're excited to tell you guys about. Plenty of fun stuff around there. Jessie, we're going to get her to try Taco Bell for the first time at some point during the proceedings here. I saw Popeyes is doing a collaboration with Don Julio that I have to get involved in. It's all going down. So make sure that you are subscribed to the YouTube channel. Check it out there. Thank you to our guests from today, Anthony Gargano, again from the fellas here on Fox Sports Radio on Saturday mornings, and Trevor Sikkema, Pro Football Focus's lead draft analyst, for stopping by and helping us. If you missed that, check us out wherever you get our podcast or right here on YouTube as soon as we get done. Dad, let's start off with some big news here from the world of women's collegiate volleyball here. We know Nebraska as a program has been one of the foremost volleyball programs in the women's collegiate game for a while. They were a part of that great moment at Memorial Stadium where you had the entire football stadium filled up for a volleyball game that broke the record for attendance at a women's sporting event. John Cook, the head coach there, retired after a lengthy career at 68 years old, 4 national titles in 25 seasons with the Cornhuskers. He led them to 12 Final Fours as well, and an all-time record of 722 and 103, the best winning percentage for any D1 program over the last 25 years. Pretty incredible run at a really important program at a time where we're seeing a continued interest in women's sports.
I mean, coached 5 Olympians, a player of the year award, 3 national players of the year, 72 All-Americans, 25 academic All-Americans, 10 conference players of the year. They've sold out, maybe the biggest thing, they sold out 337 consecutive regular season matches since 2001, the longest streak in NCAA women's history. 3-time coach of the year, national coach of the year, 8-time conference coach of the year. I would say that's a pretty heady resume and career for John Cook. So enjoy retirement. 68 years young, certainly has a lot of life left in front of him, and can just to sit back and enjoy it.
Yep, Danny Bushboom Kelly taking over now, former assistant for Nebraska and former player. She was a part of an 06 championship team there. She was back under John Cook as an assistant in 2015 and had been leading the Louisville women's volleyball program that had also gone on to great success, won or shared the ACC title 4 times. She was the AVCA National Coach of the Year in 2021, made a couple of Final Fours there as well. So had been successful, but Dad, we know there is no feeling quite like getting to go back to your alma mater and try and help continue the legacy and the program that John Cook had built there. So congratulations and happy trails to him. Jesse, let's get to that here. Caitlin Clark has been in the news, first turning down the unrivaled basketball league that was getting started, the 3-on-3 league in the offseason for the women's, now turning down someone else apparently this offseason as well.
Yeah, so news is coming out that she turned down the NBA for that All-Star Game 3-point contest. Her reps said she wants her first 3-point contest to come at the WNBA All-Star Weekend, so she's not going to do this special challenge with the NBA. Caitlin Clark continuing to write her own rules. Like, she doesn't care. She's going to do what she wants to do, and I love that about her.
And she's doing it for the good of the WNBA, right?
Yep.
Bringing more notoriety to the WNBA, not going to the NBA. As we know, Steph Curry and Sabrina Ionescu, they were at the NBA All-Star Challenge, the 3-point challenge. So this game now, if they want to bring an NBA player, but they'll be in their off season in July. The WNBA All-Star Weekend is July 18th and 19th. And if you want to bring Steph Curry in, but I think that's the time of the Tahoe golf celebrity thing. So I think that Steph Curry will be back in. He missed it. He won it 2 years ago, missed it last year because of the Olympics basketball team. But I applaud her that says, no, let's bring more recognition to the WNBA and not the NBA, even though a lot of eyes would have been on her at the NBA All-Star Weekend. I like that she's done that.
Yeah, I think this thread's a nice through line because Sabrina Ionescu and what her and Steph Curry did was captivating. It was great at a time where All-Star weekends in general are looked at a lot differently and serve a different purpose. That was something novel. It brought great attention, I thought, to both leagues here. But Caitlin Clark, in terms of the attention economy, is just a different animal. We've seen that. And while there were some people that were disappointed that she didn't sign up to do the Unrivaled League in the offseason, she's in a position where, hey, an exhausting rookie year, you go right from the college Final Four into your season when you're these players in the W, given where their season lines up. You throw in the Olympic break that certainly helped some. I'd imagine taking a break from not only that, but all the attention she receives, Dad, well-earned given the rookie year that she had. But you're right. This is keeping the main thing in a way that I think is good. She understands wherever I go, eyes are going to follow. And so if people want to come and watch me shoot threes, they're going to have to do it coming and supporting us and the rest of the women in the W in the summer. And I think that's a win for them and a smart move by her. So a tip of the cap to Caitlin. Still going to be interesting, Dad, to see in the NBA All-Star Weekend in general, though, how they garner interest in a lot of these. Like, I saw the other day, it was one of the headlines on ESPN.com, like Mac McClung coming back for a potential third title in the dunk contest. If that's supposed to get me excited, it's not working.
Yeah. Well, and again, the new format of 4 teams playing in a mini tournament, we really have no idea. They're obviously looking to have players play hard again. The NFL just threw the towel in on it and said, all right, screw it. We're done with pads. We'll just play a flag football game. I don't know how, again, I never really watched the actual All-Star game. I watched all the Saturday night events. So I don't know how this mini tournament is going to work.
No, again, Adam Silver, much like we talked about the 10-minute quarter things, they're trying. I appreciate effort in trying to make sure that your game that still occupies a great place in American sports and is doing incredibly well is trying to constantly improve. But, man, all-star games, like, we might just need to wave bye-bye to this. Like, they can exist. People are still going to go. Some people might watch. I get that sports rate's better than most everything you're going to put on TV. But good Lord, like, it's no slight to the kid, but, like, what are we doing in the NFL with the amount of alternates that are starting to make the Pro Bowl now? I mean, Drake May is a great kid and a great player, but now that we get to say Pro Bowler Drake May after this season seems a little bit silly in the face of what we know about the sport, but I digress. Jesse, let's get to the third here. We have been tracking the Utah Hockey Club's name like it's our job, and in some ways I guess it is here. So we've got new updates on that. Where are we at?
Okay, so they've narrowed their search down to 3 names to make an official name. Now, we know you want to stick with Utah Hockey Club, Gojo, and that's on the short list. It's Utah Hockey Club, Utah Mammoth, and Utah Wasatch. Now, this one was added after Yeti was dropped because they couldn't come to an agreement with Yeti coolers. Now, Wasatch is the Wasatch Mountains, which are in Utah. Okay?
Yeah, it's...
Like, not for me.
It's a Ute Indian word that means low place in high mountains or mountain pass, but it's also, as you mentioned, the name of a mountain range in the western United States. You can't have a mascot where one of the first things people are going to say is, what the hell is that?
Yeah.
I mean, you just can't, right? Now, Mammoth, possibly you can, but if these are the 3 choices, Utah Hockey Club is by far and away the best choice. Mammoth, you could have some fun. Think of the mascot would be pretty good. The merch would be pretty good. There's part of me that would deal with Mammoth. I could deal with Mammoth, but I think when push came to shove, I would stick with Utah Hockey Club.
Yeah.
As one of our nation's foremost supporters of the Utah Hockey Club and the Washington football team and more generic names for some of these teams that are clean and nice, I'm not going to lie. Utah Mammoth kind of hits the lips the right way. All of a sudden, I'm seeing Mammoth, and like you said, Dad, maybe it's the size thing. I love a mascot with some girth to it. Mascot with a little ass. And reanimating a mammoth for the sake of going out and supporting a hockey team. I mean, hell, you could put tusks on the Zamboni. That whole thing could be the mascot. It would be great here. There's a limitless world of ideas surrounding the mammoth. So the tides may have turned for me. I may be a mammoth guy now.
Ooh.
Wow, that would be interesting.
Yeah.
I could live with Mammoth. I think there's a lot to do with Mammoth. I would agree. But you give me my choice. I'm going Utah Hockey Club.
All right, at GoJo and Golic on Twitter. Let us know if you're walking over to the Mammoth side with us here. And while you're there, go and download, subscribe, rate, and review the show. Leave us a 5-star rating. We got one more day until we get ready to depart for Super Bowl week. Have a great one. We'll talk to you guys tomorrow.